Welcome back. I'm Tommy, and I help people step into their power, find their passions by eliminating self-defeating behaviors and thought patterns. So today we're going to talk about emotionally unavailable people, specifically emotionally unavailable partners that we may end up choosing, not just once, but on numerous occasions. The pattern of behavior, what it is, why it is, and how we can make adjustments so that we're not getting into a repetitive state in terms of who we're attracted to, actually. So I'm going to speak to this one from my own experience. I think it will resonate across the board. It's a pretty standard reason for being attracted to these types of people. And the one thing I'd like you to keep in mind is on an energetic level, we attract what we are. So we can go around saying, oh, I always end up with these emotionally unavailable men in my case. But I really have to look at the fact that if that is what I am attracting, that at some level is also what I am. Or at minimum, what I am comfortable with, or certainly what I am attracted to. So I have to own some of this behavior myself, and we'll get to it all in these next few minutes. So what I've come to understand about the pattern, I can look back as far as, my very first boyfriend, and I can move forward in my life until today. And I haven't always picked emotionally unavailable men. But when I've picked what we would define as a relatively healthy person on an emotional level, it was me who ended up backing away from the relationship for a couple of reasons. Early on in my teenage years, it was because that particular boyfriend was actually so stable that it was uncomfortable for me, because I was living in the state of chaos and had been living in a state of chaos and dysfunction in my home for basically my whole life. Let's say I was 16 years old at this time. And he came from a very stable family. And I was initially attracted to that because it's what I wanted. I wanted to be around someone who came from this different family dynamic than I did. I liked to be around his family and his home and him because there was no chaos. There was no arguing, fighting, all of that stuff that happened around my home. And yes, I was attracted to that. That would make sense. But over time, I became less comfortable with it because I had already developed these subconscious beliefs and even actions and reactions to people that caused me to move towards emotionally unavailable people. This particular boyfriend, he was kind, he was caring, he expressed his love for me, he could speak words like that, he could do things for me that were very loving. And I felt somewhat uncomfortable with that. Also because it asked me to then start being expressive with myself. And I actually didn't even know how to do that because I hadn't ever been taught that. And I'd never seen it demonstrated in my home. And I just simply didn't know how to act that way. I knew how to act angry. I knew how to walk away. I knew how to be not very nice, actually. I knew a lot of poor behaviors when it came to human interaction and communication and emotion. And I, at that age, didn't even really understand that it was me and that was the problem. However, I walked away from that relationship and I walked right towards something that was highly unhealthy. So I walked towards the most emotionally unavailable person I could possibly be attracted to, not only that, but he was actively engaged in drugs and drinking too much. And I probably was doing drugs and drinking too much too, but this stable boyfriend, we did it in a pretty stable way. But as I moved to these other men, I was moving towards less healthy behavior. And I mean, I can see it all very clearly today. At the time, I just thought this was who I liked. But the attraction was really strong. This wasn't just sort of like I think I like this person. It seemed to be almost an obsessive attraction to someone who was really not available to me. They were already sort of on their path of addiction, and they certainly didn't have a lot of time or space for me. They, little bits here and there type of thing, but nothing like a true relationship should be. And what did that reflect for me? Why was I attracted to that? Because I came from a home where I had an alcoholic father who I knew loved me, but was never fully available to me. And also, even if he didn't treat me directly, inappropriately, the family dynamic was so inappropriate, and the way in which he interacted with my mother when inebriated, and pretty much my mom. That was the interaction that happened when my dad was inebriated. He really didn't. My brother was always gone. He was older than me. My sister was gone or not around. And I was kind of hiding in my room. So it was always those, later into the evening blow-ups that happened between my mom and my dad. So he taught me what I knew about men and relationships, which is pretty darn sad. And I didn't realize that that's what I was learning. I mean, what I thought I knew was that would be the last thing in the world that I would want. And you think that you're leaving that family dynamic and you're saying, never, ever would I be attracted to that. Would I get involved with a person like that, etc., etc. However, we do. And that is some of the most frustrating circumstances and results that we eventually find ourselves the victim of. I will say victim because we're at least initially doing it without fully understanding what we're doing. We just end up in really bad situations that tend to mirror situations that we grew up in. And it takes some time to realize that that's what's happened. So this is what happened to me, and that's why I'm attracted to emotionally unavailable men. It's not just that that's the way my dad was. It was also that I wrongly concluded that if I was good enough, if I was lovable enough, I could change the behavior of this person with this illness of alcoholism because they would love me enough to change. Again, as an adult and someone who's come through my own recovery, we learned that it's not a lack of love for people. The people in addiction end up treating people in their lives and people that they actually do love so poorly. It's the disease itself that takes over, and it is a stronger pull in their life than their ability to love those around them. And my dad did get sober, and I sort of thought that was going to be the answer to everything I wanted in terms of a relationship with him. But what I learned was he was always emotionally unavailable, and he had not been taught by his own parents how to demonstrate, either verbally or physically, love. So that was like a double whammy for me, because I really thought that once he got sober, this dynamic of our relationship would change, and it did change for the better on many, many levels. But it did not change on those levels that as a young child you had always hoped for, or I think need, from a healthy parent, a healthy dad with a daughter or a son, which is the ability to say I love you, the ability to hug, to be able to have physical interaction at some level with your child. And unfortunately, even when my dad got sober, this did not happen. And I ended up in my own therapy as an adult, working through this. However, I continued to be in relationships that reflected a lot of the dynamic that I had experienced at home. And this is the nature of the beast. And I call it a beast because these ways of being and thinking are quite deeply held in our subconscious, especially if you're a young child who's come in or been born in to this type of unhealthy situation. You know, they say that these things are ingrained in us by the age of 6. What we're seeing, what we're witnessing, how things are going on in our environment, how we're being treated. And if that's the case, well, my dad and my dad and mom's dynamic was extremely unhealthy from the time I was born until I was about 13 and the marriage ended. And then I had this whole other journey a few years later when my dad got sober of trying to develop an adult relationship with him, which I did, but he was still very emotionally unavailable. He was physically there. I had a good relationship with him in terms of certain things. He was always a great mentor to my aspirations, especially in my career and things like that. He was wonderful in those areas. But when it came to anything that required deep feeling or emotion, no, it just was never going to be with him. And I learned how to have a relationship with him while he was sober, yet still emotionally unavailable. So this is why I would go out and find these partners who had similar traits. And I do believe that part of my desire was to change the behavior and feel that I was loved as a result of these people changing their behavior, which of course is not fair to them, and it just doesn't work that way. We are the only people who change our behavior. Other people don't change our behavior. So learning how to become an emotionally available person myself and being able to express myself and my feelings and my needs and my desires. You know, I get a little uncomfortable even saying that out loud because I was never asked what they were when I was a kid. Not only that, I was basically in an environment where we were asked to put all that away. And it gets put so far away that it's very difficult to try and go in there and figure that out when we didn't mature through our lifetimes in a healthy way of developing those emotions, wants, and needs, especially in an intimate relationship. So to me, this is one of the most challenging things for an adult child of an alcoholic or an addict. And it takes a lot of work to become that available person, to be able to identify people who are available, and then to become comfortable with developing a relationship with someone who is emotionally available, because it can feel uncomfortable, unknown, not something that we know, even though we want it. So I think that it takes a lot of work. This is the type of thing that I think also could be worked through with a therapist, not only a coach, but a therapist, because this is some pretty deep work that needs to be done. And I've done a lot of that work, and I'm still no expert at it, actually. But this is why we are attracted to emotionally unavailable people. We were conditioned, and we also were conditioned to be that way ourselves. So it's a two-way street. There's some work to be done. It can be done, and you can get some really great results from doing the work. So that's my message. I hope you got some value out of it. If you did, please subscribe to my channel or you can go into the description and book a Calendly appointment with me for a discovery call to see about doing some one-on-one coaching. Or you can also join us on our Facebook group page, Pure Power Coaching, or on our Instagram account, Pure Power Coaching. And I'm here to support you in any way that I can. And I appreciate you being here. And I'll see you again.